Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and it's not Spawn year. I am still reviewing a single issue, an individual issue of a comic every day, and today I'm going to take a look at nobody's favorite Marvel superhero, probably somebody you've never even heard of, a superhero that only got 12 issues in the 90s, feels like a failed canceled TV show with the number of issues this has, and it's a thing that maybe it came back at some point and I'm not aware of it. We tend to resurrect everything. Honestly, I fully expect Sony to at some point greenlight this character as a movie and unceremoniously cancel it in the same year. It's Nightwatch. Yeah, Nightwatch, the most passive sounding superhero anybody's ever come up with, although the name is weirdly thematically relevant to the story. We'll talk about that. Nightwatch is a thing that I only own one issue of, so I have 1/12 of this whole series, and I only own it because Venom is on the cover. I collect Venom. I have most, if not every, appearance of Venom from this period anyway, and, you know, this is supposed to be not Spawn year, but I keep accidentally grabbing issues that are tangentially related to Spawn or just blatant rip-offs, cash-ins of Spawn. Like, no, this guy didn't go to hell. No, he didn't make a deal with the devil. But I mean, just look at him. Just look at that face. Remember that face? It's Spawn. And now that I'm looking at it closer, it's weirdly a blend of, like, costume-wise, of Spawn and, like, Azrael from Nightfall, like Azrael Batman. And then when you get into the story, it's a mix of some other weird things too. Like, there's a lot of Batman Beyond in this. And once again, I've never read any other issue of this, so I'm just going on what I'm seeing from this part of the story. But there's quite a bit of recapping, and I think it does an okay job of setting the stage and giving you a sense of who its major players are and what the ethical conundrum is for our hero and what he's all about and what his conflict is. But there's a lot of, like, corporate conspiracy in this, industrial espionage. There is eco-terrorism. This villain that we have right at the start here, who I assume was set up in last issue with a real typical kind of accident that she has in her place of work. She works for kind of the evil, the real typical generic, I'm going to say generic a lot in this review, science laboratory. She's trying to come up with a new renewable energy source that's not profit driven. Where have we heard this before? Anything and everything that tries to do social commentary about big business and energy. And anyway, she seems like a Batman Beyond villain to me. She looks like if Nova from Marvel was a Batman Beyond villain, but Nightwatch's, hey, look, there's Venom. Yeah, he shows up. He's there on the cover, and he's in and out of this issue. We'll talk about that. Nightwatch, in his backstory and his origin, feels like weirdly, and here's a sentence I never thought I would say. I never thought I would say. He seems like a cross between Spawn and the 80s superhero TV show Greatest American Hero. Yeah, his whole thing is, his name is Trench. What's his first name? Is it Simon? Kevin Trench. Simon Trench is something, right? Okay, so Kevin Trench, 10 years earlier, sees somebody wearing the suit and gives him the suit, and he tries to put it on and do something good with it, apparently, and it blows up in his face. He doesn't use the suit properly. He doesn't understand its immense power, and something bad happens that the issue doesn't really explain. I've not done any research on this, so just looking at this one issue, I don't know what exactly that is. I didn't feel the need to read up on it, because I'm getting the gist of it with this, and So he takes himself out of commission for 10 years. His name, Nightwatch, sounds really passive, and that's also the character, which he has in common with Spawn. The difference, of course, because Spawn just kind of lurks around and mopes in alleys and waits for trouble to come to him and doesn't ever actually proactively try to accomplish anything. He's just sad and pathetic. And Nightwatch is kind of that way too, but the difference is now he's trying to atone for it. He's trying to make up for it. He knows that he hasn't been handling things right, and he's got kind of the Spider-Man responsibility thing where he realizes that when you have this kind of power, even when you're not really sure what to do with it, a lot more bad things can happen. A lot more consequences might be your fault if you just sit around and do nothing and let bad things happen to people. And so now he's actually using his outfit and going out and being a vigilante. The atmosphere of this is, I keep saying Batman Beyond, is just kind of Batman in general. This feels a lot like Marvel just doesn't have enough of these kinds of characters beyond Moon Knight and Daredevil. And Spawn is really popular right now. Nightfall just finished, or we're right in the middle of it. This is 1994. I guess we'd be done with that by now. And these kind of anti-heroes and darker vigilantes, really conflicted characters are really popular right now, who are trying to discern right from wrong, having a hard time living in a world of shades of gray, determining what the right course of action is, because the world doesn't play fair with them. They never know where they stand with society, with the criminal justice system, and the system doesn't seem to actually work. And so that's why you have characters like Venom, who feel the need, as he says here, to be judge, jury, and executioner. He can't trust that the court system is actually due process and is going to work the way it's supposed to, so he gets his creepy claw mitts in the middle of everything, and he's the lethal protector. This reads very much like a mid-90s Venom comic, like one of those very silly, hard to take seriously minis. It's maybe a hair, like a tad better than those, but the writing is very similar to Lethal Protector and a couple of those other minis that I've read, whose names are escaping me right now, where Funeral Pyre is one, I think, but anyway, where there's just a ton of exposition in dialogue and characters explaining the moves that they're about to make in action sequences, and thought bubbles where characters are thinking to the audience so that we know everything that's happening and we understand their motivations, and we get caught up if we haven't read previous issues, even though a real-life human being wouldn't be necessarily thinking all these things that they know already, just so that we're aware of them. Let me get credits for this issue here. This is written by Terry Kavanagh. That is the name of a guy that I used to work with back in my mortuary days. That's really interesting. Terry Kavanagh with art by Mark Tenney. So let me go back for a second to, well, before I get back to the Spawn connection, let me, and by the connection I mean again, just look at him. This exists because Spawn is a big deal right now. But also, like, here's Venom, and we're doing this ripoff of Spawn, who was created by Todd McFarlane, who, you know, co-created this look for Venom, and like, he has a lot to do, of course, with why Venom is so popular. So there's even extra McFarlane thrown into this. And then I mentioned Nightfall earlier. That stuff is a direct response to Image Comics and in what's going on over there with McFarlane and Liefeld and Jim Lee and those guys, and is kind of a criticism and satire of that stuff. and there's nothing satirical about it here. It's playing all of this stuff real straight and edgy, and it just comes off kind of generic and forced and throwaway, and like there's a couple of good ideas here, and I'll get to those, but it's real C-D-list kind of stuff. So I think the other reason that Venom is here, at least in a thematic way, is because we're dealing with, and this will round us back to Spawn again. Really, it's not Spawn here, I promise. The other reason he's here, I think, is because he has a living costume that is very powerful and can't really be controlled, and that's what Nightwatch is dealing with. He's got, even though one of them comes from space, is a symbiote, is an alien in Venom, and the other one is a science experiment. Which is interesting because that's what Venom is later on in Ultimate Spider-Man. Venom will essentially be what Nightwatch is, but Trench is dealing with the same thing that Spawn will deal with and that Eddie Brock will deal with, in that he's got a costume that is more than a costume, that is maybe alive. There's kind of a question here, I think, as to whether this one maybe counts as a living organism or not, and whether it's a sentient being. I'm actually not sure. I don't think it's supposed to be, but I guess it could. I could see that being a revelation later on in this, and he's not able to tame the suit, but he's stuck with it, which is the same thing that Al Simmons has with Spawn, and the 10 years thing is interesting. Like, he takes himself out of commission on purpose and doesn't go back to the people he cares about because he's afraid of hurting them. And Spawn is taken out for in most versions, I think it's also 10 years. I think the movie, it's just 5. I forget now. It's been so many years since I've read any of that stuff. But so the situation is different, or the reasons that it's set up is different, but it's also pretty similar, that like he's now choosing to come back to his old life, and again having to face the consequences for not being there. So he finally goes to see his last living relative, who is his uncle, and his uncle from a previous issue is starting to realize that there's the potential that Trench is still alive, and as soon as he finally sees Trench, he punches him in the face and isn't interested in even hearing an explanation, and says there's no excuse for you to abandon your family like you have. It doesn't matter why you did that and why you've come back. You've completely disappointed me and you've ruined everything, and I'm done with you. And Trench agrees with what he's saying. He's got tears in his eyes, still somehow less whiny and less unsympathetic than Al Simmons is, and is trying to actually make up for things, and isn't just, wallowing in self-pity. And so I do appreciate that, certainly. This is a thing I wasn't sure if I wanted to broach, but I will mention it because I couldn't help but think of this. Because there are so many blatant connections to Spawn here, it's very hard not to think that the reason that Trench is made an African-American man, and the reason that most of the cast in this comic is black, is to make it feel more like Spawn. And maybe not, but there's just so many other similarities. And so, of course, I'm not saying, like, you have to have any reason other than this is the story you're telling, this is the art you're making, you'd like your main character and your cast to be black. I'm not saying that there has to be any more of a reason than that. I mean, Al Simmons is black because that just seemed like the right choice to Todd McFarlane, which of course is really cool and respectful, and whether he's doing it for, specifically diversity purposes or not. Like, we don't have enough black superheroes, so I'm going to make one. I don't know if that was, exactly his motivation, and I honestly don't really care. That was the choice he made as an artist. That's cool. Maybe that's what this is, but given that it's he just looks like Spawn. It's hard not to think he also just looks like Al Simmons because of that also. And if you think about it, there are a lot of these throwaway, unmemorable superheroes that show up in Marvel during this period, and how many of them are just white guys again? So I never want to get in the trenches with this, no pun intended, and make too big of a deal out of, choice of ethnicity and diversity and all of that. I just want to look at a story and see if, how effective it is. With me, you don't get, extra points for being progressive if your story sucks. Like, yeah, I'm glad you did that, but, like, who's going to remember this? So, I'm not saying that yay or nay on that. I'm just saying that it's really hard not to look at this and say, yeah, he probably looks like Al Simmons because he's supposed to be Spawn. So there's and also there's a character in this who we don't get a lot about in this issue. So if you haven't read what's before this, I don't know very much about this guy. There's a guy that runs a nonprofit who happens to be, and maybe this is a reveal, I'm not sure. His secret identity is Cardiac, another vigilante character that nobody really remembers from the 90s who shows up in some Spider-Man stuff, and I think he might be in Maximum Carnage, or he's in issues right around that, in arcs right around Maximum Carnage. But anyway, there's this admittedly kind of interesting dilemma that Nightwatch is dealing with, where there's a time paradox question, which gives you. Which makes you kind of wonder about fate and free will again. The thing that we talk about all the time with a lot of comics, and especially with time travel stuff. And again, we've kind of been here and done that. But there's this situation that I find kind of interesting, where he goes to the evil corporation, which I'm struggling to not just call Alchemex, and he finds the Nightwatch suit that is the suit that he's wearing that will end up being sent back in time. And so he's coming upon this fateful moment in history that he has to make happen so that he will get the suit in the first place. And if that doesn't happen, if he were to stop it, which he thinks might be the right thing to do, now there's a paradox, because if he doesn't send the suit backwards, in time to get it, then he wouldn't be able to destroy the suit in the first place. So what would even happen? And is it even possible? Like, does he have free will? Can he choose to not do that? Or would something happen that would make sure that somehow it happened anyway because it's happened already? And that was enough to make me sort of interested in taking a look at the next issue just to see where that would go, until you get to the cliffhanger and bad guys have to step in to stop that from happening. Now, maybe that is what's supposed to be interesting about it, that the universe has stepped in and is stopping him from making that decision so that things will work out the way that they're supposed to. But man, I thought we were in for kind of an interesting cliffhanger where he would be either just about to destroy it or actually does, and then, oh man, what happens? And instead, he just gets attacked by the Silent Shadows, who are, I guess, the bad guys that attack him 10 years earlier. So we're probably right upon when the suit would get sent back, and this is about halfway into the series, so this seems like about the right time to deal with that. So it's a little interesting, but not as engaging and not as exciting of a cliffhanger as I thought maybe it would be. Venom must continue past this in at least one more issue. In the text box at the bottom that says next, one of the entries is Vengeance of Venom, and I don't actually own the next issue even though Venom's in it, so maybe he's not on the cover and that's why I never thought to pick that up, or I just haven't run into it. I don't know, but I'll probably have to at least get issue 6 at some point anyway, just to complete my 90s Venom collection. But yeah, this is not terrible. It's not super well written, and it's not super memorable either. The big takeaway is just, I mean, it's more time paradox stuff. It's a guy that looks a lot like Spawn. We're working really hard to make him not seem like just a ripoff of that, while aesthetically he absolutely is, and we're using that to sell the book, of course. So yeah, not terrible, but certainly nothing like the coolest thing that I've looked at yet so far during Not Spawn year. Hey, I figured something out today that I wanted to share with you, and this will set up. I'm going to do not a cliffhanger, but I'm going to do a segue into tomorrow's episode. So I have an app on my phone that I've been using for a few years now to catalog my comics called CLZ Comics. This is one of the more popular ones, and it is a really wonderful database. I like all of the different options it gives you, and I guess now I'm just doing a review of this. It's really easy to pull down covers and information, and to add in your own individual info and customize it for your specific copies of issues, so that you can remind yourself of what shape your books are in, and and which covers you have, and that sort of thing. And anyway, I was taking a look at this today, catching up on some of my cataloging, and I'm using this to help me decide what books to read and review each day. And there's a feature here that I knew this had, where it will randomize and just pull up some issue in your collection. I'm close to 10,000 in here, and I thought you could only pull up a random issue inside of a series, because there's a button for that when you're just looking at a series, but I never noticed one with when you're looking at the full list of every series and every issue that you have. And then I accidentally discovered this cool feature where if you move your phone, or like jarringly, if you shake it like a magic 8-ball, it will automatically come up with a random issue. So we're going to do that right now, and whatever it comes up with, whether it makes sense to review out of context or not, is what I'm going to review tomorrow. And so this time, and I'm not going to do this every time, I might do this a few more times throughout the year, but this time tomorrow, for our 15th day of Not Spawn year, you're already going to know what the issue is if you made it all the way to the end of Nightwatch number 5. So all 5 of you that actually got to the end of this almost 25-minute video on a random issue right in the middle of a 12-issue run that probably 100 people on the whole planet have read, you'll get to know what we're doing tomorrow. So congratulations and good for you. Here we go. I'm gonna shake. Here's our magic 8-ball. It's gonna tell us what we're doing tomorrow, and I hope that we get a comic cover and not words that say outlook not so good. Here we go. See, look, it's loading a random comic. And the comic we got is Wolverine, Volume 2, number 126. So we already did a Wolverine comic this year. It was a What If. You're not able to actually see the words here. My apologies. But yeah, so we're going to do another Wolverine comic that will not be a What If. That's actually in continuity. It's from 1998, and it is a Claremont issue with art by Francis Yu. And I don't know if this is in the middle of an arc. I don't know if this is going to read okay by itself. But that's what happened. That's what came up. It's a story called Blood Wedding. So yeah, look forward to that. I can't wait. I'm waiting with bated breath. I am the best at what I do, and what I do is completely random and pointless. Thanks a lot for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and let me know if you've ever read Nightwatch. I'll see you again. The most passive-sounding superhero of all time. Thanks a lot for watching. I can't wait for the Sony movie to be announced and then never get made. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. Happy reading, folks.